interoperability issue between networks. That part of this headline is going to be very interesting to me because wouldn't you think that they would use the same network for CBDCs so that everything could be easy for remittances and whatnot? That's just my 2 cents. But anyways, there was a blueprint framework released for a global CBD system, which is kind of weird about the interoperability thing. And if you guys don't know what SWIFT is for the audience, and that's okay if you don't know, it's an interbank messaging system that facilitates cross-border payments, international wire payments. And they basically want to achieve instant frictionless cross-border payments. And the current network is usable in 200 plus countries and connects over 11,000 banks and funds. For the record, I do not like CBDCs. I don't like the idea of it. Yes, I want people to have access to their money. I want them to be able to send to their families or do whatever they need to do. But I do not like CBDCs because I think it is going to be a direct attack on our privacy. I want to toss this one over to Will for his thoughts.
Yeah, I'll snag it really quick and throw it up to Zach. This is an interesting story, and there's a few notes in here about what it could portend for the future of digital payments. The biggest thing is SWIFT is a political body, right? It's run by governments. It's agreement between multiple governments to move money. That really came to the forefront in the spring when SWIFT booted Russia off its payments platform, right? They said, Russia, you cannot use SWIFT anymore. You're done using it. You cannot transfer money across it. Banks cannot settle across with each other. And that led to a lot of problems with Russian ruble, where the ruble collapsed because of that for a little bit. Now back much stronger, but collapsed for a little bit. It caused a lot of volatility within the economy, and then also basically limited Russia's banking system to touch anybody outside of Russia or any other system that Russia has set up. So we saw Russia start talking to Iran and some other countries like China. But that was about it, right? Like once you are cut off from SWIFT, you're cut off from everybody. So now let's put this within a digital framework, right? Where we have some sort of obscene idea of a decentralized layer of nodes talking with each other. And SWIFT is running on top of this. And as Jamie Crowley put it in the article, there's some elements that are similar between Bitcoin and what SWIFT is envisioning here, or at least what we have a description of the SWIFT envisioning. They're cousins, but they're pretty estranged cousins, right? Like there's not that much of a similarity besides this notion of decentralization. There might be a few things, like they might have a few nodes, but at the same time, one Bitcoin node is equivalent to one Bitcoin node. A node in the SWIFT sense is not that, right? A SWIFT node would basically have control over everything, would be able to stop anyone. So if Russia had a SWIFT node, you could cut that off from the rest of the system and they wouldn't be able to move their money. It wouldn't be digital cash, more or less. It would still be dollars just running on top of a different rail and on top of a different system, which gets you back to the initial problem with all these things that people have brought up so many times. Why do I need a blockchain for this? Like, where is the decentralized element that I need in all of this? If I want some sort of proof of authority system with any sort of money system, which governments do want, then you don't need a blockchain. So this story is interesting because you get some digital asset elements in there and because you do think that this could be the future for where SWIFT goes. But in terms of it making sense with Bitcoin, there's not a whole lot of correlation. Zach, I'll throw it up to you.
Yeah, let's do it. So SWIFT, I think, has long been the target of, the crypto true believers, right? Like we can have open blockchain networks that derail like SWIFT as a necessary middleman to global finance. I think like of late, SWIFT seems to want to make sure that it's not getting fully disrupted, right? Or it wants to put up the defenses against potential attackers to their business model. And I think for me, the thing that stood out is SWIFT recently announcing that they were doing some work with Chainlink on a pilot, right? Integrating some data feeds from probably the industry's leading Oracle provider, Chainlink, and toying around with it in whatever way suits their needs. But the idea that SWIFT is sort of actively participating in at least thinking through some of the existential challenges that digital assets might pose to it as an organization, that to me is really interesting, right? So they want to kind of co-opt some of that disruptive energy and see if they can sort of put it to use in a way that works for them. So that to me is the interesting thing. Maybe less so with the C.B.D.C news, but definitely with the Chainlink news. That Chainlink and SWIFT are in conversations seems pretty remarkable to me. Wendy, I saw your hand up, throwing it your way.
So I actually mentioned that because I saw a lot of people in the official announcement from SWIFT, the thread on Twitter, they were like celebrating because it did mention Chainlink. For the record, I do hold Chainlink, and I'm also going to be speaking at one of their events tomorrow in LA. But It kind of irks me out a little bit because I just don't think people understand. I think people are just reading the headline and they're not understanding how bad a CBDC is going to be. Like, I really do feel like we're going to lose a lot of our privacy. And it's not about Ethereum versus Link or Ethereum versus XRP, whatever it is. I just want people to understand what we are kind of risking at this point. I don't think the CBDCs are going to be private. I think they're going to be able to track us. I think it's not going to be super transparent for government officials, for government spending, which that's kind of what we should be pushing for. So only thing I want to say is please don't just read the headlines and be excited, especially if it involves your coin. Just kind of consider the long-term impacts of what is going to happen. And do we really want this to happen? At least none of this stuff has been integrated yet, and we still have time to voice our opinions and our concerns. So this is not something you're happy about. Make sure to reach out to your local government officials.
Just 30 feet away as the girls locked themselves in the bathroom and called 911.
It hits really close to home when it shows up on your front doorstep. I'm standing in front of crime scene tape in front of my own house. You can't get me more outraged than right now.
Authorities say 3 teenagers were walking down the street when someone in an SUV opened fire. 2 of them were shot before taking cover under Zeldin's front porch. The conservative congressman has been very vocal on New York's soft on crime policies, contributing to the spiraling crime crisis. But he says it's past the point of politics when seemingly nowhere is safe. Police say the incident outside his home is gang-related and, quote, unrelated to the residents of the house. Zeldin says he does not know the identity of those shot, but he heard they are being treated for their wounds. The search for the shooters is ongoing. Back to you.
Let's bring in, thanks, Todd. Let's bring in Lee Zeldin now, New York gubernatorial candidate, congressman from Suffolk County. What another 12 hours you have had. Could put us, if you can, Congressman, with you and your wife. You're in the Bronx at a Columbus Day parade. And then how do you find out about a shooting a half block from your house?
We get a phone call from our daughter, Michaela. We hear our other daughter, Ariana, in the background crying. She's speaking to 911. They were the 911 callers. Michaela's freaking out, but we're not able to hear everything because of the Wi-Fi connection. They were locked inside of a bathroom. They were at the kitchen table. They were doing homework. All of a sudden, they're hearing multiple gunshots. They then hear screaming. They run upstairs, lock themselves in the bathroom. One of my daughters calls 911. The other one calls us. At first, they're thinking that the people that they hear screaming, the individuals who are on our porch, around our porch, they don't know whether or not those are the people who are shooting or the people who are getting shot. So we just told them to stay locked down until we got the clear from the Suffolk County Police Department, which did take a while. I mean, they responded, they secured the scene, and then we told them to get out of the bathroom. But it really freaked them out. This is something where you had 2 people who got shot who were essentially laying down about 10 feet from where they were doing homework. One of the bullets landed about 30 feet from where the girls were doing homework. And yeah, this hits extremely close to home. It showed up at our front doorstep yesterday. When we were getting back to the house, I mean, we had to go through crime scene tape. We were getting advised where to walk so that we weren't stepping on blood. This is not something that we were planning to return home to when we left for a Columbus Day parade in the Bronx.
Gosh, we're so glad that your daughters are okay, and we're glad that they had each other, because that's such a scary situation for them to be in, and for you as a parent to be in. To get that phone call is every parent's worst nightmare. Have police, Congressman, told you any motive for the shooting, or have they told you any information about who's responsible?
They haven't yet. When we came home, we opened up our security camera footage, and 4 of our security cameras picked up these 3 individuals who were on our property. One was laying down underneath our porch. Another one was laying down under a bush in front of our porch, just a couple feet away. The third person who wasn't shot was moving all around the property, up and down the porch a couple times, through the front yard. So he was coming across all 4 of the cameras. Those are the only 3 people we picked up on our security camera footage. We do have vehicles that are passing by on the street, but we haven't been notified as far as who did the shooting and what the motive was.
Sure, absolutely. Although, you know, there are stories out there, it could be gang related, but that doesn't make you feel any better. I mean, that's the problem with Chicago right now, and it's a complete disaster. Congressman, I think a lot of people think because you are a congressman, a member of Congress, you probably have security for you and your family. That is not the case. How did your daughters know to go to an interior room and lock themselves in a closet or a bathroom? Because that was brilliant on their part.
Yeah, I really am grateful for how swift and smartly the girls responded. They just went straight up into the upstairs bathroom, locked themselves in, and called 911. The shooting took place at 2:18. By 2:19, Ariana was on the phone with 911. They responded really smartly. Unfortunately for New Yorkers, this wasn't the only story yesterday. I mean, you're also reading about somebody else who got stabbed on a New York City subway, somebody else who got slashed in the East Village. And this is day after day after day. And there are a lot of parents, there are a lot of families dealing with this reality of rising crime in New York. For us, fortunately, my daughters knew exactly how to respond. But listen, they were just sitting there at the kitchen table doing homework, and bullets started going off all around them. And we don't live in, some huge house with, this isn't a gated community. This was something that happened really just feet from where they were sitting.
What's pretty amazing is just how different media covers this. Newsday, your hometown newspaper, puts it on page 11. New York Post has it on the cover. They see it as a huge problem because, this is the second major incident around your candidacy. You could say, well, they weren't targeting you, Congressman, but they weren't targeting that parent at Parents' Day in Marriott in Poughkeepsie either. That was the crossfire from 2 homeless criminals that was sitting there. It's all the randomness of this crime that hits to you. In fact, one of the questions were to you, questioning you yesterday in your press conference. One of the press members said, why are you politicizing this so soon after a major incident like this? Which I found is an outrageous question. You're not politicizing it. You're bringing up crime in a city that you want to be governor in.
I was answering her questions in front of crime scene tape in front of my own house.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was standing outside of my home answering their questions because they asked me to come outside to speak to them. So I said, okay, y'all are asking for me to come out to address what happened. Happy to do it. Rather than doing a whole bunch of one-on-one interviews while we're spending this time with our daughters, we'll come out and just answer everyone's questions at the same time. The first question is then coming after me for standing in front of the crime scene tape speaking to you.
Right.
But listen, you mentioned Newsday. Here's the problem is that there's an election coming up in 29 days. And they want to do everything in their power to prop up Kathy Hochul.
They do.
And the problem is that if they were going to give any fuller coverage to what happened, they don't want to incidentally end up helping my candidacy. So I don't know if Newsday has actually said anything negative about Kathy Hochul ever. I'm not sure. Maybe they have. But the reality right now in this state is that New Yorkers don't feel safe. Even the former Democratic governor, David Patterson, Democratic governor, was making statements in an interview over the weekend about even in the 80s and 90s, he didn't feel as unsafe as he does right now. People aren't riding the subway because they're afraid of being pushed in front of an oncoming subway car. You have people who are walking the streets with their head on the swivel, and if they have to go 2 blocks, they're calling an Uber rather than walking when they used to be willing to walk 20 blocks. I mean, all across the state in the last week and a half, we've had people who have gotten murdered, from the mayor's dad who is from Long Island. There was a woman in the Buffalo area who was murdered last Wednesday. Her husband was released, the shooter, the murderer, was released a day earlier on cashless bail. Attacked her. She said to people, this guy's going to murder her. She was wearing a bulletproof vest when he shot her the next day in front of their 3 kids. So this is a reality we should be confronting head on. The idea you're not going to confront it because you don't want to hurt Kathy Hochul, who you're trying to prop up, that's the disgrace. I mean, don't come after me for answering your questions.
It's the new New York.
No border stop for the border czar. Texas Republican Tony Gonzalez slamming Vice President Kamala Harris for not visiting the border on her trip to his state over the weekend. Past Texas with more for us. Hello, Griff.
Hey, Sandra, good afternoon. And it's worth pointing out that Vice President Harris last visited the border last June when she went to a processing center in El Paso. She's never been here, Sandra, and seen this. Let me take you up to our Fox Sky drone and show you what you can see here. This is ground zero for migrant encounters. Last fiscal year, more than 470,000 to the Del Rio sector, and the migrants are coming from more than 40 countries right now over the weekend. Some 13,000 migrants across the entire Southwest border from as far away as Somalia, Syria, and Iran. Now, let me show you some video of some drone we shot this morning, Sandra. This is a group of about 100 or so at a pecan orchard. They come every morning around the same time at daylight with the efficiency of having perhaps your Amazon package delivered. The Border Patrol, National Guard, and Texas DPS wait for them, process them, and send them along their way. It's a daily occurrence like clockwork. I want to show you, take a look at this video we shot with our drone on Sunday, though. This is the large groups we're getting, upwards of 200 in this one. There were 178 total. 21 were children, among them a woman from Cuba, Sandra, that I asked how much she had paid a coyote to cross the river. She said $1,500. This is all a part of what Congressman Gonzalez really wants Vice President Harris to see, and why he's so frustrated that she won't come and see it. Here's a little bit of what Representative Gonzalez had to say. Take a listen.
He doesn't have to visit me. I'm a Republican. I get that. But guess what? Henry Cuellar is a Democrat. Vicente Gonzalez is a Democrat. Veronica Escobar is a Democrat. She could visit anywhere along the border. The fact is, they've put their head in the sand. They've abandoned us along the border.
And the other thing that you would see is the human smuggling that cartels are profiting on so much. In the 10 days since I've been here, October 1st, when the new fiscal year began, in just this area, they've thwarted 10 smuggling attempts. That, of course, doesn't include the ones we don't know about that successfully may have gotten through. Sandra?
Griff Jenkins, yeah, Griff, thank you very much for your reporting on all of that. Now to a sheriff who is dealing with this crisis firsthand, Cochise County, Arizona Sheriff Mark Daniels. Sheriff, thank you very much for joining us. It's hard to imagine why the vice president, the border czar, in the middle of a border crisis, wouldn't make a stop there to see what is happening firsthand.
Well, good afternoon, Sandra, and I agree 100%. The impacts these border communities, to include my own, is facing is nothing but negative, totally negative when it comes to public safety, national security. or humanitarian. You look at the 5 million that breached our border, the million gotaways, 1,000 that died on U.S. soil, and then you look at respected, like in my county, we're pushing 1,000 people have been booked in my rural county jail for border-related crimes. These are state violations that have been booked in my jail, and I can't get this president, this vice president, or leadership in Congress to engage us, recognize this, or even act upon it. It's a complete insult, and I agree with the congressman. We've been left abandoned down here.
Wow, that's a huge statement. I mean, engage with us, work with us. To that point, how much contact have you had with this White House on this issue?
Sandra, I'll just say that this is the first president that has failed to meet with sheriffs. Our National Sheriff Association, we've invited them. They have failed to meet with us. It's like we don't even exist. 4 weeks ago to a conference here on the border with sheriffs from all over the country, not even an answer that we can't make it. They just totally ignore us. First sheriff in history, first president in history not to meet with this country's sheriffs.
Wow. Just give us a sense of what your communities are dealing with there, Sheriff.
Well, right now we're putting containers on the border, thanks to our governor, trying to secure our border. We deal with pursuits every day. We deal with crimes every day as a result of this border. We have 100% gotaways in our county on the southeast corner of the state that I deal with. I think we lead the nation, the Tucson sector, which we're part of, when it comes to smuggling by the cartels, drugs, you name it. We're seeing it here on the border, and it's nothing positive. It's destroying the quality of life that we should be addressing here on the border that we're being neglected upon. This border is a reality for this country, not just for the 31 border counties. America needs to stand up and unite when it comes to our border in this country.
So, Sheriff, we've been showing images of containers lining up, getting ready to put them in place, some already in place, getting hauled in. To your point about that effort, when you do this, what are you seeing as the actual impact of that? Are they working?
Well, they're still going in place. I know they've already installed them and stacked them in Yuma County, Arizona. Talking to the sheriff out there, he says it's making a difference, it's slowing them down, and it sends a message that absent the federal government, our state governor, our sheriffs in the state that are engaged, that we're going to do everything we can to protect our citizens and, most important, our state and this country. So shame on the federal government for not being a partner with us on this, because that federal border is their responsibility, not the state and locals, but we're doing their job and we'll continue to do it to protect our country.
Well, Sheriff, we certainly sense the urgency in your voice. If you had the ear of this White House, if they did reach out to communicate, which you said they have not yet, what would be your first request? What would be the biggest resource that you need today, Sheriff?
We need a message. We need a message from this president that the border is going to be secured and there'll be consequences for violating our laws in the country. Those that come across our country illegally will be addressed properly, and we also need them to engage with us. Right now we have none, and as long as they stay absent to this, the problem's only going to get worse in Texas, New Mexico, California, Arizona, and all other states in this country. It's not a positive thing. We got to have a president that cares about Americans, that wants to protect us all, as his oath of office states, and mine does too.
To that point, this is no longer just affecting those border communities. It is all over the country experiencing the vast number of people that continue to flow over that border. Sheriff, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.